Thanks, Paul.
Just
Hey,
to
Jim?
be clear, Rick didn't write that scripture. He inscribed it, but God wrote it. So just so we know. And another thing, Paul, every time when he used to preach, he would sing a song somewhere in the midst of his deal, and he was able to come to a memorial service and sneak in a little song there. I'm pretty impressed with that. So,
Hey,
Mike Shreve, are you
Yeah, hey,
up
no,
next?
Jim, I've got something back here. I'm at my post right now, but Mike Owen, the Mapes have been part of our family for 35 years. And
Pay no attention to the man back there.
yeah,
behind you.
we met him at the rec center like day one, him and Jamie and the kids, and our kids grew up together. And, Rick didn't have a name. Well, he might have had several names for me, but my name for him was Ricardo. That's what I always called him, And we were always doing fun stuff, man stuff. We were shooting, we were snowmobiling, we were doing stuff that I look back on now and, cherish those moments. But I also have some Rick Pino queued up right here too that I might hit in a minute. But anyways, what an amazing guy. Loved him, loved his laugh. That was infectious. And we are just so blessed to have had them in the house. But Rick, just being a real man of God, is so appreciated. So there you go.
Thank you, Mike.
Jamie, Matthew, Lucas, Sarah, and of course I see Nate over here. I mean, gosh, this is homecoming. When Rick first got saved, he and Jamie were going to our home meeting, and we used to go camping. And that's where Rick and I established our names. My name was Michael, and by the tone he said it, I knew what I was up for. But I always called him Ricky. And you got to realize when you got a guy you're always looking at him like this, and you go, Ricky! But yet there was a respect there, and the first time I ever really had Rick come into my radar or into my circle of understanding was when the victory tree up at South Tahoe High School, one of the sides, the sister tree, broke off and went into the library. And guess who was called? His dad was there, said, Rick, go out and get your chainsaw. Knowing Rick had a chainsaw in his truck. Went out and limbed that thing up and got it up and out so the janitors could tarp it off. And I thought, who is this kid? Because Mr. Mapes was one of my teachers. So he gets saved. He's in our home group. Nothing changes. He's still Rick. I can remember the boys out at, we were down at Sly Park, and I've got movies of you guys on a bent over tree and you're bouncing on it. And Rick says, that's how I train them. Something about the trees. But Rick and I were pretty close, so much so he let me borrow one of his chainsaws to go cut firewood. And he goes, now, Michael, do you know how to use this thing? And I said, yeah. And I showed him, and he goes, okay, I'm going to give you this one instead. He said, but I got to caution you, it's not a 25 or 40 to 1 mix, it's 50 to 60 to 1. You run it too hot, you're going to seize it. So if those of you who know what I'm talking about, that means you hit the trigger, you get it done, you shut it down, let it cool off. Well, I was limbing with it, and it seized. I gave it back to him. I go, Rick is going to kill me. And you know what he said? He said, it's my fault. I shouldn't have given you a hot saw in that mix. You remember that, don't you? So it's always been like my relationship with Rick has always been a hug, hit, hug. And sometimes it was a hit, 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 and maybe a hug. But I loved him, doing the church here, 168 trees, watching him fall them. And he'd always say, you better make sure there's no nails, because I'm not going to sell these things if they're found with nails in them. So we had people out there with metal detectors going over the logs, and we only lost about 25 out of those 168 trees that the lumber company wouldn't take. But Jamie, something you might not have ever known. I think it was Dean Kennedy. Was that the fellow's name? Dean Kennedy hired Rick, and Rick actually worked for this roughneck guy, bucking knobs down off the hill down in Jackson, California, which is like entry-level logging, and he needed a job. But because he knew he needed to do it, he did it because he wanted to provide for his family. And if you can imagine Rick Mapes driving a little tiny Toyota pickup truck, no king cab, no F-950, he drove that and he said, if this is what it takes and driving down there is what I got to do, I'm going to do it. So I love Rick, and his last words to me, Don and I were out of town when we as elders prayed over him, and the last words I had a PS, and I think Alex asked, he said, oh, Mike's got one more thing he wants to say, and Rick goes, I know, Michael's always got one more thing to say. But that one more thing to say was, Rick, what's happening to you is not because of what you've done or what you've not done. And I thought that was strange. That was a weird PS to praying for him. But I think we all know now that Rick didn't know what was coming on him. It didn't come on him for what he did and for what he didn't do. It just happened. And Jamie, men and woman, Nate, we love you guys. And Len, John, the family, it's here. And I just want to say thank you for letting us love your dad, your husband, your brother. It was an honor for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Anyone else?